Years ago, in a remote part of the country, there was an ancient forest known as Darkwood. This forest was dense and almost impenetrable, with towering trees blocking out the sunlight. At the heart of Darkwood stood an abandoned mansion, which the locals whispered about in hushed tones. Known as Ravencrest, this mansion had a dark and mysterious past, filled with tales of disappearances and haunting spirits. On a cold autumn evening, a paranormal investigator named Jonathan arrived in the nearby village. Jonathan had spent years exploring haunted locations and documenting his findings, but Ravencrest intrigued him more than any other place. The mansion's dark history and isolated location made it a perfect subject for his next investigation. Equipped with his camera, flashlight, and recording devices, Jonathan set out for Ravencrest. The path through Darkwood was treacherous, with twisted roots and overgrown foliage making every step challenging. As he approached the mansion, the air grew colder, and an eerie silence enveloped him. The mansion loomed large, its once grand facade now covered in ivy and decay. Jonathan took a deep breath and pushed open the heavy wooden door, which creaked ominously. Inside, the mansion was shrouded in darkness, with only the dim beam of his flashlight piercing the gloom. Jonathan decided to start his investigation in the grand hall. The hall was vast, with high ceilings and ancient portraits lining the walls. The air was thick with dust, and the floorboards creaked under his weight. As he set up his equipment, he couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Suddenly, a cold breeze swept through the hall, causing the portraits to sway. Jonathan's flashlight flickered, and he heard a faint whisper. He turned quickly, but saw no one. Determined to capture evidence of the paranormal, Jonathan began recording. "Is anyone here?" Jonathan called out. His voice echoed through the empty hall. For a moment, there was silence. Then a soft whisper responded, "You must leave." Jonathan's heart pounded, but he stood his ground. "Why must I leave? What happened here?" The whisper grew louder, more urgent. "You should not stay. The shadows, they are watching." A chill ran down Jonathan's spine. He decided to explore further, making his way through the mansion's dark corridors. Each room he entered was more eerie than the last. In one room he found a grand piano covered in dust. As he approached, the keys began to play a haunting melody on their own. Jonathan recorded the unsettling scene and continued his exploration. The deeper he ventured into the mansion, the stronger the sense of dread became. Finally, he reached a large wooden door that looked different from the others. It was intricately carved and seemed to pulsate with a strange energy. Jonathan hesitated but then pushed the door open. Inside he found a vast library. The room was filled with ancient books and scrolls, all covered in dust. As he walked through the library, the temperature dropped further. The whispers grew louder, and he saw shadows moving out of the corner of his eye. At the end of the library, he discovered a hidden staircase leading down to the basement. Carefully, he descended, the air growing colder with each step. The basement was a maze of narrow passageways and dimly lit rooms. In one room he found an old ornate mirror. The surface was covered in grime, but when he wiped it clean, he didn't see his reflection. Instead, he saw the image of a terrified man. The man in the mirror seemed to be trying to communicate, silently mouthing words. Jonathan recorded the eerie scene, his heart racing. Suddenly, the man in the mirror vanished, and the reflection showed only darkness. Jonathan turned to leave, but the whispers became deafening. The shadows began to move, closing in around him. He could feel their icy touch. Desperately, he ran back up the stairs, the shadows following closely behind. He burst into the grand hall, breathless. The front door of the mansion was open, and he stumbled outside. The cold night air hit him, bringing a sense of relief. But as he looked back at the mansion, he saw the shadows standing at the door, watching him. Jonathan knew he had captured something extraordinary, but he also understood the danger of returning to Ravencrest. He returned to the village and reviewed his recordings. The evidence he had gathered was unlike anything he had ever seen. His final report on Ravencrest generated immense interest, but Jonathan never returned to the mansion. The whispers and shadows remained a mystery, a testament to the dark secrets of the old mansion. And so, Ravencrest remained silent and abandoned, its eerie halls waiting for the next curious soul brave enough to uncover its secrets. It was a crisp autumn morning when Emily received a peculiar letter. The envelope was old-fashioned, sealed with wax, and addressed to her in elegant, flowing script. Curious, she opened it to find an invitation to a place she had never heard of, the Enchanted Grove. The letter read, "Dear Emily, you are cordially invited to the Enchanted Grove for a gathering unlike any other. Follow the path through whispering woods at sunset. Trust your heart, and all will be revealed. Yours sincerely, the Keeper of the Grove." Emily, a lover of nature and adventure, felt an inexplicable pull to accept the invitation. She packed a small bag with essentials and set off for Whispering Woods, a forest she had often visited, but never fully explored. As the sun began to set, Emily reached the edge of Whispering Woods. The trees here were ancient, their branches intertwining to form a natural archway. Taking a deep breath, she stepped into the forest. The path was narrow and winding, lit by the soft glow of fireflies. Emily walked for what felt like hours, the forest growing denser and more magical with each step. She noticed the flora and fauna around her were unlike anything she had seen before. Glowing mushrooms, singing flowers, and creatures that seemed to blend into the shadows created an otherworldly atmosphere. Just as she began to wonder if she was lost, Emily saw a soft light ahead. She quickened her pace and emerged into a beautiful clearing bathed in moonlight. This was the Enchanted Grove. The grove was a circular meadow surrounded by towering trees whose leaves shimmered in various colors. In the center stood a stone altar covered in intricate carvings and surrounded by small glowing orbs floating in the air. Around the altar, several other people stood, all of whom seemed as mesmerized by the place as Emily. A tall figure in a hooded cloak approached Emily. "Welcome, Emily. I am the Keeper of the Grove," the figure said, lowering their hood to reveal a kind face with eyes that sparkled like stars. "You have been chosen to witness a special event tonight." The Keeper guided Emily to the stone altar, where the others had gathered. Each person was handed a small ornate candle. The Keeper explained that they were to light the candles at the same time, using the flames from the glowing orbs. When the signal was given, everyone lit their candles. The flames danced and flickered, casting a warm light across the grove. Suddenly the carvings on the altar began to glow, and a soft humming sound filled the air. Emily felt a rush of energy, as if the very essence of the forest was alive and speaking to them. As the light from the altar grew brighter, Emily and the others were enveloped in a gentle, golden glow. Images began to form in the light, scenes of the forest in different seasons, animals playing, and the cycles of nature in perfect harmony. Emily felt a profound connection to the earth and its ancient rhythms. The Keeper spoke. "The Enchanted Grove is a sacred place where the balance of nature is maintained. Each of you has a special role to play in preserving this harmony. Tonight, you have been chosen to become guardians of the grove. Emily felt a sense of honor and responsibility as she joined the others in taking the pledge. They vowed to protect the grove and the natural world, to respect all living beings, and to uphold the balance of nature. With the ceremony complete, the keeper thanked them and presented each new guardian with a small, carved pendant as a symbol of their commitment. The glow of the altar faded, and the grove returned to its tranquil state. As dawn approached, Emily and the others made their way back through whispering woods. The forest, now bathed in the soft light of morning, felt even more magical. Emily's heart was full of a new purpose and a deep connection to the natural world. Back in her cozy cottage, Emily placed the pendant around her neck. She knew her life had changed forever, and she was ready to fulfill her role as a guardian of the Enchanted Grove. Emily continued to visit the grove, meeting with the other guardians and learning more about the secrets of the forest. She shared her knowledge and experiences with her community, inspiring others to cherish and protect the natural world. The Enchanted Grove remained a place of mystery and magic, its secrets known only to those who had pledged to protect it. And so, the balance of nature endured, safeguarded by the guardians who answered the call of the whispering woods.